Yes, Planning Director. The first item under new business is item A, 8025 Bonham, mixed-use building playground on the park for exterior alterations. The proposed project consists of removal of the existing drop-off area pavement in front of the building and replacing it with new colored concrete. A new pedestrian walkway and seating area, also in colored concrete, will be installed from under the front arcade to the drop-off area. The new sidewalk will extend west of the new drop-off area to new steps and paving near the Brentwood Boulevard public sidewalk. The applicant is also proposing to remove the existing landscaping within the drop-off area and in the landscape bed west of the drop-off area and replace it with new landscaping, including trees. The proposal also includes installing new uplighting and bollard lighting for the drop-off area. The applicant is requesting a public sidewalk in front of the building be sandblasted and that 3 parking spaces on Bonham Avenue be designated as 30-minute tenant parking. This is not part of this consideration for this application. However, the Public Works Department will take these requests into consideration. The proposed new landscape is simple but will create a fresh new look. The proposed plantings are likely to be impacted by high salt use on the drives because they are not in raised beds. There are 3 street trees being removed from the right-of-way and 11 trees being removed from the site with a total of 87.5 caliber inches for site trees. Staff's recommendation is to approve the plan subject to the following conditions. 1, that all work in the right-of-way shall be brought up to City of Clayton street state standards, including the following requirements. First, that the public sidewalk adjacent to the work shall be removed and replaced with the city standard sidewalk. Second, that the street trees identified to be removed shall be replaced with city-approved trees against the curb line. These 3 street trees are shown not to be replaced in the right-of-way due to the new design, and street tree replacement is required at 1-for-1. Third, that new irrigation lines have to be run to the relocated street trees. And fourth, that the caliber deficiency in caliber inches of trees will have to be made up on site by planting additional caliber inches for compensation to the City of Clayton Tree Fund. Additionally, the project will require a re-review by the city's contracted landscape architect for compliance with the following items. A, address the outstanding items pursuant to the existing tree schedule analysis. B, the PDFs for drawings L102 and L103 are blanks. They will need to be reprinted. C, provide a complete digital tree chart in Excel format and put the alternative drawings. The chart will calculate the tree replacements required and/or compensation to the City of Clayton Tree Fund. D, provide a second sheet of the existing tree plan to show where tree numbers 19 through 23 are located and numbered. Make sure all the existing trees are shown on the tree chart. And E, there are 13 8-foot by 10-inch height ornamental trees proposed for the site. Provide a caliper equivalent so that they can count for the caliper replacement.
Okay, thank you. Please come forward and identify yourself and
Okay, good evening.
additional information.
Right, I'm Jeff Davis with HOK, and I'm here this evening on behalf of our client, the Coleman Group, for their property at 8025 Bonham. We wanted to share information related to the exterior improvements, including lighting, landscape, and painting of existing canopies on the building. So we wanted to go through this as a precursor in a way that we foresee other renovations happening to the building, both on the interior and the roof deck of the building itself. We weren't sure if this was going to trigger ARB review, so we thought we'd be forthright and come to you and just talk about the exterior improvements. The first plan that you can see on the slide here does call for replacement of existing landscape in this area. Currently the conditions are rather compacted. There's a lot of other miscellaneous materials out here, so we call for replacement of existing trees in this area and replace with existing or with acceptable tree species within the City of Clayton's accepted range. There's 3 existing honey locusts located here. We plan to actually keep those without having to remove them. The condition of the existing pavement in this area, we've had discussions with the client. The actual material itself is in quite good condition. We're discussing actually doing a sandblast on this and refinishing that surface, so it wouldn't be a complete removal and renewal of that material. We are calling for new lighting standards, new bollards in the space. And then architecturally, I think the one thing of significance is that we are going to light this with LED lighting. This is the main canopy coming out over the drop-off area. And then this canopy as well as these 4 smaller elements are to be repainted and refinished. As I mentioned, this is just one early phase of the project. Let me go through this. I brought examples of plant material. All this plant material itself will fit within the City of Clayton's recommended plant species. We do have the planting plans associated with that. We were remiss in filling out the appropriate tree chart. We have rectified that and have submitted the plan with the changed tree chart as well. And then finally, the lighting plan depicts, again, those bollards that I mentioned, and then additional tree uplighting. The real idea here was to remove 20, 25-year-old trees, provide some visibility to the corner of the building as this building is being rebranded and renovated for the market.
Okay. Thank you. Questions, comments from the commission?
Where are those 3 parking places on the bottom that
Actually, the proposed spaces are on Brentwood at this location right here. So there would be 3 30-minute spaces proposed at that location.
You said you corrected the caliper. You're taking out 87 and a half, you're replacing with how much?
Scott, I don't know that number offhand, but we've got them calculated. I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Has the landscape architect looked at it?
If she has, the conditions of approval under our recommendations for items, or related items that were missing and were not calculated correctly, that's why the listing of conditions.
You referred to repainting the canopies on the building.
Correct.
Are those all existing?
They are. Let me go back to that plan. So what we've done is anything undercover is this kind of milky white area. There are currently 4 small projecting canopies here and then 1 larger at the drop-off. So those are all existing.
And what will they be repainted as to match the rest of the building?
They will. There's proposed interior renovations. Some of the exterior elements, like the fountain that was installed within the last couple of years, and the canopy at the entrance here for the tenants and Parisian. There's black granite in here. These canopies would be actually painted to a warm, darker gray than they currently are. The idea there is that it would provide some contrast and some interest on the facade of the building.
Susan, one of staff's recommendations was to replace the, had to do with the adjacent sidewalk. Where is that exactly?
All work in the right of way shall be brought up to City of Clayton streetscape standards. That is primarily along Bonham. Yes.
So will it become wider?
It will, so we'll have I don't know what the current dimensions are out there right now for the sidewalk, but it is, what is lacking is the tree grates, the correct, proper location of the tree grates and the street trees themselves, and the break pattern, and I believe some of the concrete is not to current city standards.
So the plan is to be ready to have that.
Correct. Yeah.
So then, in reality, we'll see more trees than on this drawing.
The way that I understand it is this set of trees here, and there were 2 in this location here, actually were the street trees in the right of way. And because I guess at the time when that was installed, they weren't able to bring those out to the actual curb edge. So our proposal was to actually keep these in place and do some replacement here.
Well, that's different than what we consider, so I don't have requirements for the rest of the sidewalk.
So if I understand correctly, the condition that we currently have from staff recommendations, we would require, what we're used to, the grade towards the curb with the street closer to, the trees closer to the.
Correct. Yes. But again, now that they're not removing those, I don't know, I'm not sure to what extent Public Works will require them to do any of that work. That's just what I'm being told now, so I didn't realize that, otherwise I would have found out. Come to the meeting without answer.
Other comments? Any comments from the audience?
I have a question.
Yes, please identify yourself.
Michael Sorkin. I have a question about the sidewalk. In the past, that sidewalk has been very slippery in wet or inclement weather. And the sandblasting you're talking about, will that take care of that issue?
It should improve the issue. I wasn't aware of any slippage on there. Anything installed should be, it should have a minimum coefficient for any kind of slip resistance on it. So the sandblasting certainly will do that. We're primarily doing it to remove existing paint that's been applied to that surface over the years.
It's one of the more dangerous sidewalks I've encountered in a public park. So I hope it does take care of the problem. If it doesn't, is there anything else you can do?
Anything, well, I'll say this, anything we would touch in the public right of way would be brought up to a suitable standard. Besides entirely replacing all of the sidewalk around that corner, something like that would take care of that issue. We would put a broom finish or something like that on it, which it currently does have. It does have a broom finish on the sidewalk.
Thank you.
Sir, would you spell your last name for me?
Sorkin.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? No. Do you understand all the staff recommendations,
Yes.
as well as the additional one about Public Works?
Yes, I do.
Any further comments from the ARB? No. Do we have a motion?
I'll be glad to try to make a motion to approve 8025 bond with staff recommendations, but I need some clarification on the last one, Susan.
I'm not sure I quite understood. I think you're safe if you just do it with all staff recommendations as they are, because I think the Public Works Department is going to determine what constitutes work in the right of way when they see a final plan. So I think you're covered with what
Motion
you
to
got.
approve with staff recommendations.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is item B, 45 Lorenzo Place, and that has been postponed. So the next item is 8100 Maryland Avenue. This is a canopy consideration. The applicant proposes to construct a 304 square foot vinyl canopy, which is 19 feet 2 inches wide by 16 feet long, attached to and extending 6 feet from the east facing front of the building towards the sidewalk. The purpose of the canopy appears to be to provide shade to a proposed outdoor dining area in front of the existing restaurant along Redwood Boulevard. The canopy will cover an aluminum frame which will be supported by 5 steel legs, which will be bolted to the concrete patio. The canopy structure will be 10 feet 7 inches tall at its highest point and will taper down towards the sidewalk rail. It will be 7 feet tall at the front. For comparison, umbrellas used in outdoor dining areas typically range between 8 and 10 feet tall. The site is unique because the outdoor dining area is located on private property. 5 existing street trees located at the back of the sidewalk were recently removed by the city, and and are scheduled to be replaced. The city's forestry division has indicated that the trees will be replaced with lace bark elm, which is similar to those across the street on Brooklyn Boulevard. The proposed length of the canopy appears to interfere with the remaining tree wells and replacement trees. However, the dimensions between the tree wells and the front edge of the canopy and the front edge of the canopy and sidewalk were not provided by the applicant. At maturity, the replacement trees should reach a spread of approximately 30 feet. Therefore, the canopy structure will have to be of a size and location that does not interfere with the replacement trees. The color of the canopy is not specified in the application. The proposed design materials of the canopy are of high quality, and it is constructed of material which is consistent with the design of the existing canopies along the front of the restaurant. Staff's recommendation is to approve with the following conditions. 1, the length of the canopy shall be resized appropriately to accommodate the replacement trees and therefore shall be located no closer than 15 feet from the center of the existing tree wells. And 2, that the color of the proposed canopy shall match that of the existing canopies.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rick Ganghoff. I'm with Lawrence Fabric and Metal Structures manufacturer. First thing I want to do is, I was told to bring some samples and some flame retardant certificates. Shay with Herbies is with me.
Sorry, Aaron Kyle.
I'm sorry, Aaron. And we are looking to get this canopy approved as drawn. The existing tree location was not part of my drawing originally when we applied for it. I do show on the drawings where the sidewalk is, where the edge of the canopy is. We have really only one place to mount the front 3 posts. And those are onto an existing concrete wall underneath the existing condition that runs fairly parallel with the building. If we reduce the projection, that becomes a difficult design because we've got really nothing to mount onto underneath that concrete slab.
Could you help us understand that dimensional difference that you're talking about?
Well, I mean, on the plan view, my canopy is approximately 16 feet from the wall out. And the sidewalk starts, which angles, but on this closest point is 19 feet. It's further on the left of the south end. That's the beginning of the sidewalk. And the sidewalk is 8 foot 1 inches wide to the curb.
Is there something that can be put up on the screen for the people to see?
Do we, did you do that? Do we have anything that can be projected?
We do not have anything that goes on the screen. I was not aware that we needed to.
Did you understand the issue with the tree line trees and the amount of space you need to fill out?
Again, my name is Aaron Title, I'm with Herbies. So when we originally decided to put this awning up, we were under the impression that those tree wells were going to be moved to the edge of the street like the other tree wells on our block. So we were actually told that there was supposed to be, we never actually removed those trees, they were removed by the city of Clayton. And I was told that there was a plan to actually redo all of those wells because they're in pretty bad shape along that area. They're kind of off-centered and not quite right. And the trees couldn't live as well as they're supposed to in those existing tree wells. Now, I don't have anything official. I was just told that by Public Works when they were doing it. But if we have to account for those trees going in at 30 feet, we will not be able to install the canopy. I mean, that will be the case because the trees, we can't mount it anywhere else. We wanted to mount it further back, but we were told originally that it needed to be mounted onto that concrete slab, so that's how that got adjusted.
Susan, have you heard anything from Public Works?
Yes, I checked several times with Public Works, and I spoke with Mr. Heidel on site and indicated that the trees were going to be replaced. And I was going to find out what species that they were going to be replaced, and then the canopy would have to be adjusted accordingly. The canopy, when I originally saw it, wasn't of this shape or dimension or size. So I think the original proposal probably would not have interfered with the trees when they were replaced, but apparently that original design was changed between the first time I spoke with them and this application. So I willingly shared that information about the trees to make sure they didn't design the canopy to interfere with them.
And if I remember correctly from our conversation about other trees, street trees, in particular, the Electric building, we do not have the authority to, we can't override street trees, over a crowd. Those are not within our.
Right, yes.
So was there any conversation about the placement of the tree wells and the changing the placement of the tree wells?
Not for me. I had discussed, internally I discussed with Public Works that we were concerned that the trees had been removed and we thought perhaps not lawfully. I was informed that they were removed by Public Works and that they were to be replaced. Again, on the original application, I'd gone up to the site and trying to get some dimensions to figure out if the canopy would interfere with the trees on the sidewalk. And I met Mr. Taylor there and we spoke about the fact that the trees, I had been informed by Public Works that the trees were going to be replaced, and it was just a matter of deciding what species were going to be replaced in that area.
I'm sorry, not to put them on the spot, but Spencer, do you know if those tree wells are scheduled to be moved?
They're not scheduled to be moved, but there have been discussions about that possibility.
Thank you.
It seems like there's enough uncertainty to table this. I mean, if you voted right now the way staff's recommendations are, you wouldn't have the canopy you're after.
And with that, I think we need more coordination with what trees and tree wells are going in, how it would affect the canopy so that we have a complete picture of everything.
Just of the applicant. So you said that you were told that the placement of the bases was fixed and that there was no other option to place your bases. Is that true?
The placement of the post into the concrete, there is, we pulled up some lids and got the view underneath. There's actually rooms underneath down there. There's a concrete wall that runs parallel with the building. It has a finite on-center placement from the back of the canopy, or the back of the wall line, to that point, and that's where we have our posts sitting right on top of that 8 to 10 foot tall concrete wall.
So you're saying there's basement underneath the sidewalk, and you can't place your posts down on the wall, it has to be on the wall that defines the eastern edge of that basement.
Yeah, engineering would require that, correct?
Well, Scott, were you making a proposal?
It seemed to make sense. There seemed to be an awful lot of questions that could be resolved, or at least talked about offline. So if that's a motion, I just made.
You need to table it?
Motion to table.
I was gonna, just for discussion, I was gonna offer to approve with the staff recommendations, and then that would also make us have a conversation with those things, see if there's any mistakes, but I don't know, that may be possible. And he wouldn't have to come back if we can resolve the issues. Maybe he does have to resolve it, and
Right, but that wouldn't it drive us to essentially require that as presented, we would have to have Public Works relocate those tree wells.
which may or may not be a possibility, I don't know. Yes. I'm good either way, just throwing it out there.
I prefer to table it since there's so much uncertainty, just personally.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We will table it and go forward.
Just for action item noted, is it then to be determined by Public Works if those will be placed? Or is it on us to draw something?
You know, we'll be back in touch with you to try and resolve the issues the best we can.
Thank you very much.
The next item is item B, 8100 Maryland Avenue. This is a fire feature and signage. The applicant proposes to install a freestanding metal firewall feature that will be fueled by propane gas to be located perpendicular to the front of the building along Maryland Avenue on a private patio. The firebox is proposed to be approximately 13 feet long, 3 feet 6 inches tall, and 8 inches wide, and will be constructed of stainless steel. The applicant proposes to incorporate the name of the restaurant, Herbie's, into a decorative aluminum panel, brown in color, to be located on both sides of the firebox. The aluminum panel is approximately 7 feet long by 3 feet 4 inches wide, or approximately 23.8 square feet. Per the city's sign regulations, the proposed lettering constitutes signage. However, the dimensions of the lettering were not provided by the applicant. Pursuant to section 425.060, the Plan Commission has the authority to approve alternate ground signs when a building has fewer signs or signs with less area than is permitted by chapter 425. In this case, the applicant has an existing wall sign which is 16 square feet in area, and therefore the Plan Commission may approve up to an additional 9 square feet of signage per side for a total of 25 square feet. The site is unique because the outdoor dining area where the firewall will be placed is located on private property, is above grade in some places, and is separated from the sidewalk by an existing planter wall fronting Maryland Avenue. Proposed firewall will be located 8 feet 2 inches from the back of the planter wall and 8 feet 2 inches from the building front. It will be located behind the existing Trova art piece, which is on a substantial granite base, so the visibility of the firewall from the street will be minimized by these conditions. The design and materials of the firewall are high quality and consistent with the design of the restaurant, the building, and outdoor dining area. Staff's recommendation is for this board to approve the firewall and propose signage with the following conditions. 1, that the lettering of the signage shall not exceed 9 square feet per side, and 2, subject to the review and approval by the city's fire marshal.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Jennings. I'm with Firmus. We are general contracting. We're representing Herbie's here tonight. And just so we're all aware that I apologize for not including the signage. Actual Herbie's name on the feature is 3.5 square feet. So the name size is that. The size of Herbie's on the signage is 3.5 square feet.
So it's below 5 square feet.
Yes.
Did you perchance do anything where you showed how the Trova and the firewall would interact? I'm a little concerned about the art piece, and I don't see anything giving us kind of context.
So actually, when we had this designed, we designed it with the Trova in mind. Troco is did the building of it. So it will run perpendicular to the building on that side. And we didn't do a high polish so that it would complement the Trova as opposed to, compared to it. So it's high grade aluminum as well.
So they'll be complementary to each other.
That's correct. And when the designer was creating it, our exact words were to him, we want to complement, not take over the Trova.
And are there actual flames coming out of it?
So they're low, kind of smaller flames that it's similar to that you see on any patio in a restaurant. It's a 7 feet piece that goes in the middle of the 13 square feet with the metal coming up on either side of it that allows protection from it. But it's no different than you would see at a Billy G's or any patio at like 360, anything like that would be restaurant quality.
And it's meant for heat as well as obviously drama.
No, it's not meant for heat. No. We're applying for heaters instead.
But will you be able to see the flames behind the signage?
Yep, just a touch.
Just at the top though?
Yep.
It'd be much cooler if that was kind of glass and you could see.
Is the actual firebox enclosed, or can rain get in the top of it?
Not at all. It's actually completely enclosed and sealed. It's of the highest quality. I mean, this is, tens of $1,000 piece
So
of
this
equipment.
is its final finish?
That isn't the, I mean, that's what it will look like. It's not fully finished there. It's still waiting in a warehouse to be assembled on site. So the ends of that, I believe you're looking at, will be closed up and sealed, but we can't do that until we come in and install the gas line and so forth.
I meant more the finish of it, not.
Yes, ma'am.
I assume that. Oh, man.
I think it's a good-looking, creative design, and look forward to seeing it in there. We have staff recommendations, and I believe we've already met recommendation 1 about the size of the lettering, and it will go before the city's fire marshal. Any other comments? Any comments from the audience? Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve with staff recommendations.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Before we move into the public hearings, the intent tonight is to have the applicant completely review all the changes both in the special development district as well as in sub-district 1 and sub-district 2A. Our intention is to take the time to hear the presentation tonight and to fully understand it. Our intention is not to vote on it tonight, but to come back as they are already on the December 19th agenda and continue the public hearing to that time. So we will open the public hearing, and we do not have staff reports. So once we open the public hearing, we will go directly into the applicant's presentation. So do we have a motion to open the public hearing? Okay, thank you. Kathy, did you get that?
When we would open the public hearing.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, the public hearing is now open.
Mr. Chairman, I remind the audience members there is a sign-up sheet here if you would like to speak on the Centene item. If you don't mind just making your way up to the front of the sign as they're presenting, and then we'll call your name and let you speak at the microphone when it's your turn.
Good evening. My name is Bill Reitmuth from Centene. I'm the Vice President of Real Estate and Facilities. I want to start off by thanking the City of Clayton, your staff, and of course the Architectural Review Board, the Board of Aldermen, for all of their hard work and attention to detail in reviewing our project. I would say that all of us here on the project team are really excited to be here tonight to really go through the presentation. It's really incredible, and I think you guys are going to be really excited after you see it. My role tonight is simply to introduce our presenters. First, you're going to hear from Bob Clark. He's the CEO of Clayco. He'll speak, and followed by him is going to be Eli Hoisington from HOK. We're really excited about this. We've listened to the public, and we've listened to the city staff, and we've really gotten to a great place. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Bob Clark. Bob?
Thanks, Bill. So as you know, we started back in June, early June, introducing the project to the public and to the Planning Commission. We appreciate the enormous amount of time and energy that everybody has put into the effort of getting us to the point where we are today. We feel like we did listen very carefully to everything that was said both by the public and by the Planning Commission and the Board of Aldermen. And we went back and we made some modifications to our plan that we think are in keeping and in the total spirit of the comments that we heard. I'd like to go through a little bit of the why and then I'll go through a very detailed submission of the special development district changes that we're amending. And then the idea would be that we either get a vote on that or we push it off into the future whenever everybody is comfortable and all the questions are answered, of course. And then after, and I don't know the technical, if you close one public hearing to hear the actual sub-districts, but then we're prepared tonight to make our first presentation on sub-district 1, which is the actual nitty-gritty details of track 1, and then after that, we'd like to make our very first submittal for sub-district 2A. In neither case are we requesting any kind of vote or anything tonight, because as we've always said, we want to be transparent, we want to listen to everybody's comments, and we have an incredible team that we're working with in HOK, our civil engineers, our Cushman Wakefield partners, and of course the Centene team has been working closely together, and we're willing and ready to answer questions. So I think what this watercolor is indicative of kind of where we're headed and what kind of changes that we feel like we've made. Some are more significant than others, but in general, what we're talking about here is a project that's slightly smaller in total square footage. I'll get into some details on that. You can see we've one of the major changes that impacted the project was leaving the old Lyle in place, which was a stipulation that we made in the Board of Aldermen meeting. And when we did that, the garage got a little bit bigger and towards the west. And as we started looking at the smaller track 2 site, because Lyle was back over here originally in our planning, we started just going back and looking at the whole project, and we decided that the real gateway opportunity for us is when you get out to Forest Park and everybody entering into Clayton on the east, going all the way back into the conversations about the master plan back from the 50s actually, talking about Forsyth being this kind of gateway boulevard. And the missed opportunity was when we had the auditorium here, and the site was a little too small for it, as it turned out. And so what we really think is that for an iconic piece of architecture to be seen as soon as people are traveling west on Forsyth, and you pick up this fantastic kind of gateway entry iconic piece of architecture that brings you into the city of Clayton. So those are kind of the major, most significant changes. So why is the development team resubmitting the overall SPD? The development teams updated the SPD to reflect September 2nd city staff, ARB, and the Board of Aldermen comments. Modified the, I hope everybody can hear me okay. We modified the SD1 and the SD2 plan. Leaves South Lyle in place, as I said before. It also allowed us to align our signals and our entries with Lyle and Lee, which was very important in the traffic study. Comment 7 in these plans asked us to provide a publicly accessible pedestrian connection between the Metrolink station and Subdistrict 3. You'll see that we're still planning that. The comment 1 was to really provide active retail, commercial, and residential uses along the street. In fact, one of our neighbors to the north, the folks that own a lot of the real estate along Forsyth on the other side, specifically said that they would like us to break up our large parking garage structures, and we're going to show that we made, I think, a terrific improvement. And by the very fact that we're moving the auditorium to the west, we really do break up this the enormity of these parking structures along Forsyth, and it's a real opportunity for the project. And then again, we create the gateway into Clayton, which is this iconic piece of architecture. So I won't spend a lot of time on this slide, but this really covers that same those same basic facts that we are leaving Lyle in place. That also, I think, is really significantly beneficial to the Crescent folks that live particularly on the north side of the building. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that is in a little bit. And then we were creating this pedestrian connection, which was also a requirement. This would be a connection that ends up going through here. And then this really demonstrates active streets, which is something that we've been committed to since the very beginning. So this doesn't take anything away from any of the presentations that we've done in the past, where we showed all these pedestrian renderings and those sort of things. But tonight, actually, you'll see much more detail and much more meat on the bone from Eli in terms of this pedestrian-friendly concept. And I think the big move here is really getting the auditorium in the right place. And actually, as we had discussions, even with people in the Crescent about this project over the 20 or so meetings that we had, there was actually a meeting with a couple of the residents that did talk about the idea of moving the auditorium to track 2. They didn't know why we weren't putting it in track 2. And so we did go back, we listened, and we all kind of fell in love with this idea of having this gateway here.
On that last slide, was red meant to indicate retail?
The red is active retail frontage on the streets and active street space. So is the project completely different? Like, is it like a big giant switch from what we did before? No, we don't believe that it is at all. The project is, we're going to go through in quite a bit of detail here, is very similar in terms of its overall sizes. We moved some of the square footages around a little bit, but the basic percentages of changes are relatively small. A big move is that as our parking became more efficient, we were able to reduce 235,000 square feet of area out of the project with structured parking, which we think is a big benefit to the project. Anytime we can make it a little bit smaller, it seemed like people were focused on that. And the total office space in the development is almost identical. The project office space is only 1.6% different, a slight reduction. We are expecting that the hotel, we wanted to leave room for the hotel to get slightly bigger. We've talked to a couple of operators who think that the hotel should maybe be 190 to 200 rooms. And so in the plans on track 3, you'll note that we're showing slightly bigger square footage for the hotel area, but overall the rest of the square footages are very similar in nature. The balance of the housing, retail ready, corporate lodging, essentially the same as I said. And the overall tower heights and heights along Forsyth were unchanged, so they are not any higher than they were in the SDB that was approved. There's been questions about, are we trying to jam too much into track 1 and track 2? And again, I think the response is that we're not. The total current construction area for SD1 and SD2 combined is only 2.1% larger than what was submitted in September and approved. So it's a very minor change overall. We redistributed certain parts of the program, and the overall result is 200 less parking spots in SD1 and SD2. And in this area alone, 61,000 square feet less structured parking, which we think, again, is an advantage. And now we have, and I think the most important thing about this plan, is this world-class, iconic corporate and civic auditorium located to the site that we think is the most appropriate for it.
Could you just go back 2 slides? Did you address number 4?
Which number?
4.
I'm going to actually, I have better illustrations of these in the future, the heights of the buildings. Is that your question?
Yeah, you talked about the other 3, you just didn't talk about number 4.
Oh, I mean, the overall tower heights are basically unchanged. They're exactly the same height as they.
50-foot increase in the SD2 residence.
The SD2 for the residential light?
Yeah.
We are, yes, okay. And I think I'm going to be able to do a better job of describing the what and the why of that in the future, but I will join and come back and answer that question. SD2, let's see, response in order to facilitate the construction of a new 3-story facility. So some of this has to do with the fact that we are also relocating Wellbridge now to the corner of Forsyth and Hanley, which we think is a gigantic advantage for not only Wellbridge and the successful operation of their fitness center and spa, but it's also a terrific use for the corner of Forsyth and Hanley. It's going to really activate that corner, liven that corner up, and Eli's going to do a great job of going through the renderings and the design, which is very, very exciting and very upscale. I'm going to flip back and forth here for a second. So this is where we were before. I'm going to just flip back and forth a little bit. But again, this is where Lyle was here. Where this is a very substantial building that's essentially 35 feet away from the crescent on the south side of the building, and basically blocked, a substantial amount of the north side of the crescent. And so we conceded and agreed to move Lyle over, and listed some high impact, I think, advantageous things for the crescent. Particularly, we also had agreed to two bays to the west to lower the top height to 69 feet, and one bay to the east, and we're exactly in line with what we had said we were going to do there. The square footages before, we were 4,587,000 total square feet in the STD, and the amendment request lowers it by a couple 100,000 square feet again to 4,322,000 square feet, and with slight changes to the overall numbers up here. The hotel, as I said before, got a little bit bigger, but overall the rest of them are almost identical. And here you can see where we made the office tower a little bit smaller, and actually the height of this is exactly what it was before, but this narrow tower, which represents the hotel, has just gotten slightly taller. So again, to the comment Ed made, our neighbor to the north had talked about these big, long expanses of parking. That was a concern we heard over and over again. And you can see that we went from, at one time it was 1,200 feet in the approved plan, 965 feet of frontage of garage. And in our new plan, we have about 600 feet. So you can see, really, this is the frontage of the garage. So this now is all retail activated space, multi-story space. And this is the auditorium. And we think this is a gigantic improvement to the overall plan. The office buildings, again, essentially stayed the same. Same places, same locations. We had committed to moving the building, the Hanley Tower building to the north, which we conceded and stipulated in the plan. And the plans we're going to show you today are exactly in keeping with the commitment we made to the Board of Aldermen. It's not me, but it could be Jane. Here we, again, these are just key program changes that we made. Basically we're moving things around a little bit. The big move is taking Wellbridge from here and moving it to the corner here, and taking the auditorium and moving it here. So we've got this iconic opportunity. We are shuttling residential, and we're still committed to the same number of apartments and condominiums. Before we were wrapping this kind of face on Frontelet, and now we're talking about a fairly small, maybe 40 or 44 unit building that would be directly to the east of the Crescent. And then we would do, in keeping with the TOD, we think some really nice wrap residential space somewhere in here. To be planned, certainly not completely planned for track 3 yet, but we are, as soon as we get track 1 and 2 approved, it is our intention to move full speed ahead with track 2A, B, and C, and then come shortly thereafter working in concert with University City on track 3 over the next 6 or 8 months. So we're not expecting a giant long delay in coming back for what we're trying to accomplish on track 3. This is taken directly from the submittal to the Board of Aldermen and to the ARD, where we had made a commitment of what we were going to do here, and leaving Lyle in place and dropping these large parking structures down to 69 feet to give some relief to the back of the Crescent. And this shows that we've actually are exactly in keeping with that. If not, this has moved over. We've actually widened Lyle a little bit, and so this overall width of these areas here has gotten wider than it was in the ARB and Board of Aldermen approval, and there's more airspace back here. This is where we were before we moved Lyle back in place. So you can see this is a really substantial difference to the Crescent. Positive, very positive move. Here, I think, in our original presentation that was approved, the STD approval, showed that we had our wall here for the residential building, and we had a 35-foot setback. The Crescent is built on the property line, and in our latest submittal, we showed massing that was 30 feet away, and we would stipulate tonight that we would move that back and make sure that this line is exactly in keeping with what we presented it in the Board of Aldermen meeting. And so we stipulate that we would make the separation 35 feet. In regards to the height here, Joanne, to your question, there was never any height restriction in this whole TOD area except along Forsyth, and our intention of keeping the 89 feet 6 and the 69 feet 6 was absolutely in reference to all the conversations that were being had along Forsyth. That was where the real concern was. Lowering the height here actually makes the project not feasible because it's just too small of a project. And there was never any height restrictions on Carondelet, and the whole idea is to have more housing. And so it's counterproductive to have the height restriction there. In order to accommodate a 44-unit building, we really need more height than we showed before. In our discussions, I should add, in our discussions with people in the Crescent that had asked us for height restriction in that area in our private conversations, we had never committed to any kind of height restriction in that area. That doesn't mean that when we come back for architectural review for the actual approval of 2C, that we won't work with the neighbors again, just like we have in all these other processes. And we know some of them have voiced some issues and some concerns, and we'll have, again, neighborly discussions with them as we're designing the buildings. And we, of course, have to design a building that works well for us, too. So that will be something that will be coming in a detailed plan review. We have had questions from various people recently that for some reason people believe that our docks are now going to be out in the alley. And I just want to demonstrate here that this is our latest plan. We have 2 full berths that are completely underground for the longest trucks that we can get on the road today. So we can pull our full vehicles, all of our vehicles, completely underneath the building and close them in for loading and unloading. This is deep enough. This area is deep enough for all of our normal, regular, everyday truck traffic to be pulled all the way in. We do not have any intention of having any of our trucks out in the alley to load and unload from the building. So I just wanted to be really clear about that. This is track 2A. So this is mainly a parking garage with some retail space in it here. And then this will be where 2B will go, and then 2C will go here. And this will be our residential parking access. And we're still refining that, but this also shows that all of our docks for 2A will also be completely underground and buried below the building structure. So there will be no docks on the street. And then this is just more or less a recap of some of those same issues that I covered in all the other slides. So then this is, so I was actually answering a lot of questions in advance of doing the presentation, and this is the actual SDD amendment presentation. And I'm not going to go through every one of these slides. Everybody has seen them over and over again, but this is the actual zoning map. This is the SDD conceptual storm water drainage plan, which I should say has been approved by MSD. So it's not preliminary, it's actually been approved by MSD. There are some details that still have to be worked out, but the overall SDD master plan, drainage plan has been approved. The open space plan, we have gotten some questions about the open space plan, and while we did lose very small overall amount of square footage, I think it'd be like 0.31 acres of our total amount of area in our latest SDD plan, but we do plan on putting some of that back in the location when we finalize this site over here. We do want to still have a very nice and green plaza at Front 11 Forsyth where our wraparound residential will go. And we do intend, and I think in Christner's report, they talked about certain types of architecture and certain type of landscaping treatment and stairs and that sort of thing that would be a powerful pedestrian-friendly element at our auditorium. But we're just now embarking on the design of the auditorium, which we do intend to be, a very iconic piece of architecture as we've demonstrated in the past. We do think there's a little bit more work we need to do on this corner here. We can talk about that later in our detailed presentation. But otherwise, we feel like we're very close to the spirit and the plan that we showed before. Our green roof plan is exactly the same. If it has, I think maybe it's actually a little bit bigger. And as you know, all these buildings are going to be Gold LEED certified buildings, and so the green roofs are part of our process for getting the points that we need to complete that. We also still have outstanding public art opportunities, and at a later date, we'll be coming to go through the details of those. We are talking to Liam Gillick, and Mr. Neidorf really likes the idea of trying to capture, many of you have been inside the plaza area, the landscape area between the garage and Centene, where we have the Liam Gillick colorful glass canopy, which people have responded extremely well to. Mr. Gillick has now become, really a world-acclaimed artist. When we first hired him, he had not won some of the major awards. He won the highest European art award that you can get, like the Pulitzer Prize of Art in Europe. And he's back working on the project with us now. We'd like to integrate some form of his work in the bridge and in our main drop-off area on Forsyth right here. So I think that's a great opportunity. But we'd be coming back and going in great detail on the art approval, meeting with the art commission, that sort of thing. The traffic patterns, these are exactly as we've discussed with in terms of the signaling all along in the whole process, and the big move again, was to align Lyle with our ingress and egress of our main parking garage here. Same thing with Lee here, and then getting Lyle, which we would still have three lanes, one lane in and a left turn and a right turn out to accommodate residents of the Crescent. And then this is our parking distribution, which is almost identical to what we presented before. This is just the schedule. So the plan, again, is to build the Track 1 project immediately as soon as we get it approved. And at the same time, we would build 2A, and we are fully underway designing 2B, and we're just now starting to finalize our programming on 2C, but our intention is to not delay, but to have those projects moving in the pipeline as quickly as possible. And then as soon as we get all of these approvals here, our intention is to start working closely with University City and the City of Clayton in concert to get something that really works for everybody on track for that's the schedule. So open it up to for questions.
Well, Bob, before we move into that, we will open up 3 separate public hearings. So right now, we'll just take questions and answers, hopefully, for the SPD package alterations.
Okay. That's what I thought would happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully that clarifies it for everyone.
That's great.
My first question is about green space, because it seems like Subdistrict 2C has constricted the green space, which is to the north of the Ritz and to the east of the Crescent, quite a bit compared to what it had been. And I forgot how many residences you would put in that area, but I really wonder, I'm not convinced that that's the best use of that triangular space.
Here, or you're talking about here?
Yes.
We actually think it's going to be a terrific location for the condo building. And our initial conversations with developers is they responded very, very well for the site. One thing that we really want to try to achieve in the design, and this is for a later day. Right now, all we're doing is the high-level SDD for that site, but we really want to try to access this really beautiful, center round area here where the plaza and the Crescent and the Ritz have created, really nice edges and really great pedestrian space in our opinion. And so we want our building to feel like it's part of this circle because our alternative is that, kind of looking over the Ritz parking garage and the ballroom roof and that sort of thing. So our views are definitely going to be, this way and not that way. But we think this is a really terrific residential site.
Well, I would agree. I think the location of it is good, but the what it does to that chain of green spaces going from Hanley Road along Carondelet, it just seems to be minimizing the green.
This is still super deep right here. This is a lot deeper than the current Crescent from the road back. So this is still a very deep plaza right here. So I mean, again, this plan is going to be, have to be completely vetted when we come back to get the actual detailed plan approved. But our overall green space is, as I said before, is only 0.31 acres smaller than it was before in our other submittal. So I did get some questions about the green space, but it's very similar in our overall square footages.
What is, again, the overall square footage of the green space?
There's over 8, do you remember the? acres versus 1.7 acres. We are going to try to get, as I said before, we're also going to try to get as much of that back as we can.
And just to.
We're not eliminating it.
Yeah. And just to clarify, where the area that Steve was just talking about, the very west part of the driveway, right?
I'm sorry?
The area to the very west of that triangle will be driveway for the residents? Wasn't that what I understood?
The
So
area-
is everything you're showing us really green space, or is some of it part of the driveway?
So in sub-district 2C, I think we see two driveways in there. One at the west end that is called a residential drive into the
Right, underneath, right now would be the residential parking.
And then at the east end, right where your red light is,
I see, yes.
is a loading.
For the auditorium.
Right. So when you take both of those two paved areas, we're giving up even more space at this point that was green in the previous.
Well, we were always going to, not really, because in our SDD plan before, Steve, we did have access right here to the garage. We always had.
So just the.
Oh, there. Oh, yeah. And he's not. Eli just pointed out that he's not counting those areas in our green space.
Oh, the paved areas.
Yeah,
are
right. They're
outside.
not. And actually, there's only two car. Only the residential access has been added. The SDD before did already have this other access cut through here. We always had access through the on Crandall. So it's the same.
Just to add some clarity, on all the open space calculations, we do not count roadways or access ways. So if a car is on it, it's not deemed public open space in our house.
Another question, the loading dock for sub-district 1.
Yes.
The dock appears to be at an angle to the alleyway on the west and north side of the crescent. How do you get those big trucks to turn around in there?
Oh, we did it. Yeah, we actually set it up. We set all this up. We had the trucks come in. When we had this open before, we actually do have some video of this. We don't have it with us, but we actually, when we tore this building down here, we actually had our largest tractor trailers that we have in our company pull in here, make this turn back into all of these. So we actually did a study, which we can show you, but they absolutely work, and these are all per the engineering layouts. This one here, Steve, is straight back. So this is the only one that's angled. So it's these type of trucks don't come every day. I don't know which way I went here. These type of trucks don't come every day. These really long trucks. Those are for moves, big relocations, and that sort of thing. But our typical service trucks are not the longest trucks that are available on the roads. We just wanted to demonstrate that we have no intention of having trucks pulled out in the alley while we're unloading. Because we had some comments that we changed our plan and put our docks outside, and that's not true. I think another thing that's really important to point out, and I just missed this before, is that we no longer have any dock on the east side of our. So in our original SDD plan, we actually were servicing our residential building off of the alley, the service alley. We now are not asking for any dock area or any loading whatsoever on the back side. We think this is a big advantage to the Crescent folks. So we've eliminated 100% of our truck dock and that sort of thing on the east side of the alley.
So then the loading at the east side of 2C will serve the docks that will serve both
Correct.
retail and the auditorium.
Correct. Off of Crandall.
And residential?
And the residential, which is a big advantage to the Crescent.
So that takes it takes some truck traffic off of the internal alleyway. Is that correct?
All of the service for the residential is off of the Allen Ave.
One point, just to add, the question on the turning radius for the trucks we'll address in detail in Sub-District 1. We have auto turn drawings to share.
Okay, fine,
Yeah.
good.
I should have known that after that part.
Other comments?
So Bob, at this point, do you think that you're going to be able to pick up the green space that you lost up through 2C into the third?
I don't know, because I haven't seen the final plan until we get our approval with University City. I'm actually not 100% sure what our track 3 lot is going to look like. I know we can get at least 50% of it back, and my goal is to get all of it back.
Other questions, comments?
I think your dock design is a big improvement, and the street alignment is a much improved plan overall.
I mean, I think the whole project is improving. I mean, it's been through a very good give and take process.
Well, let's see if there are any comments from the audience.
Okay.
And if there are, please come up and identify yourself. And before you speak, make sure you're signed in to one of our sheets. Susan, do you have a list? And just as a reminder, we're only in the public hearing for the Special Development District at this point.
And Jeff Gershman? And that's the only one I have on the list.
Jeff Gershman. I'm the TNG LP, the owner of the property that Mr. Clark alluded to on the north side of Forsyth, directly across from this development. I've spoken on 2 prior occasions, both to the City Planning Commission and to the Board of Aldermen, with strong objections to the placement of, at that time, I think over 1,200 feet, linear feet, of garage after garage after garage on Forsyth. In our view, and we're longtime residents and property owners in Clayton, it was a tremendous waste of an opportunity for future development of Forsyth. But I must say that this new plan is better. The placement of the auditorium at the eastern, well, actually residential at the far eastern tip of the development, followed by the placement of the auditorium just west of that, and the recognition that that entrance into the city along Forsyth, coming west on Forsyth, is important, is a very good thing. But I would point out that there are still more than 2 football fields of parking garage along Forsyth. And I'm not so naive as to believe that you're going to require Centene to move all of it off of Forsyth. Although if I were king, that's what I would do, because I think Forsyth continues to be a tremendous development opportunity now, and 10 years from now, and 20 years from now. And if you fill it, if you allow Centene to fill it all up with 2 football fields of parking garage, you're going to lose a real opportunity to present something really attractive. So what I would encourage both Centene and the city to do is to continue to work towards some adjustment where there is something that breaks up, that provides relief for all this linear space of parking garage along Forsyth. In my view, in our view, the project is better served by moving some of that more towards the south. Closer, for example, to where the Ritz garage is, and put something else on Forsyth. Put some residential in Forsyth. Put the hotel on Forsyth. Do something to break up all this parking garage. And I know I've been told, well, you won't even know it's a parking garage. We're gonna require that it be almost residential-like in its appearance. And there's gonna be ground floor retail. But it still draws cars and cars and cars to Forsyth instead of people, instead of vitality, instead of community feeling. And that's the lost opportunity. And that's exactly what the master plan, and I won't quote the provisions of the master plan that I quoted before to you, but that's what the master plan says is what Forsyth should be. And so we feel strongly as residents of Clayton, as property owners of Clayton, that's what Forsyth, that's the highest and best use for Forsyth, not just to load it up with parking garage. So I want to recognize the improvement and compliment Centene for the improvement. But there's still some important things that could be done, and I hope you will do them as the project moves to its completion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any further comments? Well then, what we will do is we will continue the public hearing on the SDD, which is public hearing A tonight. And
can I just ask, are there unanswered questions? Because I guess my question is, if there's not a lot of unanswered questions, is it too controversial to ask for a vote?
at this time, yes.
Okay.
We feel like we want to go through all three of the public hearings so we get a full overall global view.
Fair enough. Okay, that's great.
Okay, so we will continue public hearing A, and we will ask to open up public hearing B. Do we have a motion to open public hearing B?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And public hearing B, of course, is about sub-district 1.
This is the fun part. This is the part I've been waiting for. So this is exciting. This is a critical moment in the project's history, and we are excited to present track 1. We'll be separating it from track 2A and B and C, but 2A is essential to track 1, so we're going to try to move those together simultaneously but in separate public hearings. So track 1 is circled. You've all become very familiar with where the location of the project is. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on the technical part of this, but I do think it's important to point out that we've done an enormous amount of engineering, working very closely with the staff. Since June, we've had many meetings with the staff, and I think found them to be excellent collaborators and very professional. And we've made lots of headway. Not to say that we might not have to make a few more tweaks, but again, the Lyle Alley, we've now taken all the service off of that. That would have been on the east side, so really it serves as a very much like it does right now with the 3-lane Lyle exit, which is not signalized, but would be coordinated very closely with the signals. It would be at Lyle North and Lee, so that there would be synchronized, so that people would be able to actually make left-hand turn out of Lyle. And again, our trucks would come in here, back in here, and then go back out onto the fourth side. And then we have our little roundabout here. I'm going to go a little bit faster so I can get Eli up here. He can really get into the nitty-gritty details on the design. Our stormwater protection plan obviously has been done in lots of detail. This just demonstrates that we've worked very closely with the traffic folks to get all the lane striping and all that sort of thing worked out. So the technical engineering aspects of that are in good shape. This shows the actual turning radiuses and that sort of thing. One thing I think that's important to point out is that the alley is going to be wider than it is currently. Right now there's a wall here, and when we build a new building, we're going to hold that back so that there's a wider corner here. That way we don't believe we'll have trucks blocking that corner and that sort of thing, so people can always get in and out of their residences, and so we can always get our executives in and out. I do think it's really, really important to point out that our main entrance to the building, we think the vast majority of all the people that enter and exit the building in the workspace environment will either park in this garage and access our lobby through these elevators in the middle of the building, or they'll park in the garage that's currently existing, come into the existing headquarter building, and then cross over the bridge. And that we do believe we'll have some drop-off in and out traffic right here. But this is the main gateway entry to the new Hanley Tower. And this roundabout drop-off area here we think is crucial. And we'd love to have one in our current building. You're all aware that the problems that we have and the congestion we have in front of our restaurants and in front of the current Centene Tower. This just is going to give us a little bit of relief for taxi drop-offs and that sort of thing, but it's not the most convenient way to access the building. People would have to, this is 20 feet lower than the main lobby, so people would get dropped off and picked up down here and have to go in a sub-grade lobby here and then go up an elevator to access the lobby. So there are some gymnastics to it, but we do think it's really critical to have. This shows again the truck turning radiuses that you asked about earlier in some higher level of detail, showing the turning radiuses that are computer generated. Passenger vehicle turnarounds and that sort of thing here. And our tree planting plan. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Eli Hoisington. And I'd also like to say, even though he's not in the room today, that Kyo Ogata has been very engaged in the project, working with the design team, and has been in almost every design meeting that I've been in. And he's got some young up-and-coming designers who we're really, really happy to be collaborating with, and Eli Hoisington is one of them, and he's going to be doing a presentation tonight. That's great. Eli?
Take just 2 minutes. We have some material boards as well. I'd like to move them up front just so you have a clear view. I didn't want them in front of the earlier presentations. Thank you all very much. Dust from the materials platform, apologize for that. We're going to jump into the design review of Subdistrict 1, basically following up on Bob's technical presentation. There we go. So I think what we wanted to start with, and this is a bit unique, I think, to this project, because we have had a chance to share a great deal of this information in the SDD over the last few months was to actually go back and remind everybody where we were and start with a rendering that we had shared a few months ago of where SD1 was. At the time, we were sharing all the SDD imagery, and so highlighting a few key things. Bob talked through a number of different issues that we have changed through the course and improved on what the SDD was, and we wanted to highlight some things that are the same as well as things that have changed in the specifics of SD1. So a couple of things that are key in this initial image we shared with you guys over the last month or two in the initial round was the height, the nature of the office building itself, and parking. I'm going to spend some time talking about parking as Bob had. So obviously the height of the building at around 419 and the number of stories, the fact that we had cantilevered a large portion of the office building over as a way to initially work with the view corridor for the Crescent. We've located a large parking structure here, which is this 8-story building which is sort of floated above the ground floor. And that had extended all the way to the corner, and we had brought the lobby down. As we spent some time looking at this building, this is the current image of SD1. So I'm going to point out a couple key things that haven't changed. We've maintained the height of 419, so this line is exactly where it was. But we've done a couple of really important things here, and specifically in response to comments we've heard from the public and from the city. The first thing we've done is we've pushed the whole southern face of the tower northwards. And we've done that as a response to specific comments about the view shed that came out of these balconies on the Crescent. And we've done that in a way to do a couple of things. One, obviously respect that view shed, but we've eliminated the cantilever. We've gone to a much simpler, cleaner building. And in doing so, it created an opportunity to actually eliminate the entire parking structure that we had located on SD1. So when Bob talked about the parking frontages that we had across the whole district, the removal of several 100,000 square feet of structured parking, this is a big piece of it in SD1. So where we wrapped the garage previously around the corner down to the down handling and down to Carondelet, this was something we focused a lot on. Here's the before, and here's the after. This lower facade now significantly clears this whole elevation. And in doing so, not only have we done that, but we've looked for additional ways to enhance the street frontage, retail activity and life along Hanley and Carondelet. As we go to the north, this is an important view, and we hadn't shared this view early on in the SDD process, but if you remember from what I just shared with you, the parking garage previously was an 8-story building, extended to the full corner. We heard a lot of great comments about activation, about key programs, about reducing parking. So not only did we take the parking off of Hanley, but we've returned now the parking all the way back to here and lowered this massively. So I think this is also a very important point that as we look to put a key piece of program here, we further stepped it down from where we're in SDD to locate key amenities for the district, Wellbridge and retail functions here at the corner. The parking garage essentially now is going from where it was in this much larger example to being compressed to starting here. And you can see the attitude that we started to take towards the garage, which we showed in early SDD packages, of a much more residential feel, scale cladding. And so we've also stepped the height of this several times now, down at the notch Bob referenced to, up, down again at Wellbridge, and down around the corner. So it adds to a much livelier, much more articulated facade at both corners. So for our site plan, this gives us the opportunity to talk to you a little about how that would be for retail and further activation along the street. And this is kind of a great diagram to illustrate that. So we need to hit this parking entrance. This is one of those key traffic considerations we talked about. We need to hit this one. But really what we wanted to do was to take that idea and have as much of the building be activated with commercial and retail uses as possible. So the garage, as it faces towards Forsyth, we have retail-ready space here. Retail-ready simply means that it's going to be ready for a tenant. Obviously, we have to get a tenant. But those spaces in red will be retail-ready. Wellbridge will have a dedicated entry onto Forsyth, close to this mid-block entry, which is another important point I'll get to in a minute. Retail here further in red, tenant space, as a small space between, but then enhanced retail that can come all the way down the building as it comes around. An interesting point too is that now that the lobby is in mid-block condition, really becomes an active building on both levels, right? So the parking has been essentially downsized about to half of what it was initially in the SDD in terms of overall bulk.
The retail that's on the corner, is that just Wellbridge, or is that also?
It's actually free for secondary tenants. So Wellbridge has a dedicated entry, and then there's a secondary space there for an additional retail tenant.
Is that divided out in the secondary?
It can be divided out. At this point, we're just looking at one space. It could be if Centene had 2 tenants that they thought was appropriate, that could be subdivided.
But this does include the Wellbridge space.
Yeah, so Wellbridge is fundamentally up on 2 and 3 with the main entry here on 1, and then the rest of it's retail space for other tenants.
On the first.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Speaking of Wellbridge, where do their patrons park?
That's accommodated in the garage here, and the large garage is part of SD1.
So does that SD1 garage go under the Hanley Tower?
It does not. Basically, the garage is self-contained. We are looking at some additional linked spaces that might be executive or other uses, but the main garage is kind of really fundamentally to the west of that mid-block connection.
To the west?
I'm sorry, he's got my sections mixed up. Yeah, it's all easy. So a key point of that too is the notion of this, the main entry has been pushed to the midpoint, and I think a question could be anticipated, why did we do that? It's to maximize the amount of distance we have here between the corner and the potential drop-off for safety and visibility, further reasons for sort of the larger easements around corners and so. So we've taken into consideration the whole Hanley Forsyth corner and what that would feel like. I'm going to use this to bridge into the sidewalk. So right now, this is a photograph actually of the sidewalk in front of the existing garage, Centene Plaza. Right, there's a 12-foot 2 city standard that is a minimum. What you experience as you walk out there right now in front of Pastoria is about 14.6. So it is a couple feet bigger, which is a great thing. Centene has already gone above and beyond in those initial planning. What we wanted to illustrate is how much further above and beyond this plan takes that. And so the red area down here is the 12-foot 2 city standard. Everything else around the entire district is well above and beyond. So what we did is, as we come up Hanley, we've actually set the tower in. So that sidewalk varies between about additional 4.5 feet to an additional 11 feet over city standard. So the reason we did this is for that a greater sense of public open space, a little bit easier walking conditions, opportunities for basically people to feel a little bit more safe, particularly on busy streets. As we get to the corner, we eased it even further, and you can see the kind of scale of it. And the anticipation here is that there's ample room for a tenant to come with outdoor benches, additional planters, etc., when the tenant comes to do that fit out, as well as this whole area along Forsyth, which is an additional 7 to 9'6" beyond the city standard. So you can kind of relate as you walk down in front of Pastoria and you're looking for a seat. The opportunity is you really wanted a few more feet there, even though the Centene has gone above and beyond. We've accommodated that. We, in addition, looked at Lyle as an important piece of the street fabric, that it isn't just Forsyth and Hanley. Lyle needed to have a similar attitude, so we've added 2-foot additional width as well in the new sidewalks. So a really rich and thoughtful public realm that I think is necessary in terms of the sidewalks to work with all the retail-ready space we showed. And this is kind of illustrating that, right? These widened sidewalks is going to allow for planters, additional green space. We're looking for that space to basically allow for the seating planter zones by retail tenants on Forsyth in a very comfortable way to encourage people to be here walking, experiencing these spaces we're providing for. And as we come down here, I think this is an important point. We have actually, Bob said about 20 feet. It's about 28 from corner to corner. So as you guys know, this is a very steep street. We do have some walls which are necessary to mitigate grade as we go up and down. We treat those walls as important elements too. We're going to have landscape at the top of them. You see the landscape plans. And even this wall will be activated in its front with a water feature so that these don't just become walls that part of our landscape environment. These I'll go through quick because I think those slides kind of cover the bulk of what we're trying to do. This talks about that open plaza coming around the street level. That's the face of the building above at the setback, right, basically at the property. And here's the main mid-block entry that we would get into the overall development. At the south, we've done a couple of key things here. Obviously, we've done our very best to right-size the drop-off court. We've added additional, we've had sort of trees to sit under and be a part of this experience. We've added a green buffer between the city sidewalk and our drop-off, and a curb for safety. And we've carved out, actually, this was a small comment early on in the process, we've carved out a small pocket park here that extends the greenway up and along the inside face of Lyle in reaction to sort of making sure that, again, not only our main streets, but our secondary streets we treat with as much green as we can. Those materials are in front of you, and I want to make sure there's images on the screen for people out in the audience. This is a continuation of the palette that's currently at Centene. So it's obviously city standard materials where we're in the public right-of-way. We're abiding by all of those, and then we move to a simple set of granite pavers in a series of grades, sort of in the same family of Centene. And you'll see this consistent through all the sub-districts. There's an attempt to have the ground plane be very consistent. A sense of, you know that you're within this sub-district development when you're there, as we kind of have paving, planting becomes specific, architecture has some specificity. In terms of trees and plantings, our main tree that we'll be using on the street is the London Plane, but we'll be mixing in a series of other approved city standard trees in those small pocket zones and pocket parks. So I won't point out where each and every one of those is on the detail, it's in the overall submission, but you can see this variety, again, of approved city trees. Our green roofs have gotten actually more extensive since the SDD, and for a couple of key reasons. One is the development of this, what we kind of call the amenity corner with Wellbridge and retail. And at the top of it, at the roof, we're going to have a large rooftop deck, which will link into key spaces inside the tower. And then a couple of step volumes here, which are also programmed. So again, this notion of reducing as much garage frontage and providing as much activity extends to the roofs, and I think is very important that we do that. We're going to provide a green buffer along the back side of the garage at the upper deck, which gives some visual interest and some green screening back towards the crescent to the south.
Can you
Please.
just talk about the buffer a little bit more?
Sure, I have a slide coming up in a minute that I think will help answer that. Just a quick rendering of what that starts to be. And you can see the intent to really articulate the roof planes. We'll note in a moment how we've actually articulated the tower as well. So we've added a little bit more interest, a little bit more shaping into what this is. And the real intent is to make sure that light and air and sort of traditional zoning kind of comes down to the corner as we look at this. So eliminating the big 8-story building, we stepped it down as much as we can to the corner. A detail of what that roof terrace will inevitably be. So just some keys in for people as we look at this. So this is Hanley, Forsyth, and just keying in where all the things I've been talking about. We've got the main office building sort of now set to mid-block. Again, we moved it north. We've set the parking back, so the office tower sort of sits here. We stepped down to 2 stories of Wellbridge. We're back to retail ready space along the whole street frontage. And this brick building is actually the parking garage beyond. An equally important view sort of up close is this is sort of standing on the grassy knoll, right, looking towards Colby's right there. This is the Crescent building, and you can see the impact of moving this tower north, I think, in this view really well. Is how we've really cleared as many of those windows and balconies as we can in this particular perspective. And the importance of adding that retail here on the plaza. You get a snapshot of some retail at the corner, the lobby wrapping actually elevated, which is quite lovely that this lobby comes out and we continue to have activation below. The bridge, which we'll get to shortly, which includes artwork, and the office tower above. So this is an interesting rendering because it's very difficult to get a rendering that actually is sitting at the corner, but the intent is just to show the overall composition looking down Hanley at this building. And this is the overall day view as we look as well. A slightly more elevated view, which allowed my camera to not be so fisheye, is looking sort of from the tower, looking back down at the sort of plane. And again, the intent here is to sort of show where that new entrance will be focused for the building. This is the garage, retail space of the street, and the new design for the Hanley Tower. And then lastly, where we started with the overall rendering from the side. So these are part of the ARE submission, obviously, is to walk through the overall elevations, which I will do quickly, but I will get to the question about the green buffer as we move around the building. So this is a good one to stop at as we look at the view from the west. So here's what we agreed to, which was clearing the balcony edge. We've actually then further stepped this in a little bit as we get to the lobby where we could. This is the tower in its most compact form and most compact location balanced between north and south in terms of where we needed the cores and activity and loading docks. And it's all one giant interconnected puzzle, and this is kind of as compact as it is. So it's actually gotten a little bit smaller in terms of its overall plan while maintaining the same height. This talks about the stepped down massing going down to the street. So really, instead of 8, more like 3 to 4 stories here.
Before you go on, a couple
Yes.
of questions on the previous slide.
Sure.
The south face of the tower,
Yes.
is it perpendicular to the west face of the crescent?
Yes.
And is it aligned with the north side of the balconies?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
Now, the north side of the tower,
Yep.
is it at an angle?
Yes.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, and actually what happens is, great eyes, by the way. When we flip back to the renderings, you can see it quite clearly here, which is that this is actually a 90-degree angle, and you can see a bend right there in the building. And so it slightly chamfers, and then it turns back at a slight angle as it heads around the corner. So, there was a lot of comments deep in some of the ARB GOA comments about articulation, varied facade heights, etc. And we do listen to all of those and take them very seriously. You can see some of that, although not directly spoken about in the SCD in some of these images. So great question. I hope I'm going the right way. I'm sorry, the arrows are upside down on my clicker. Back to elevations. So the garage, as Bob had noted, this shows the 2-story 2-bay step in the SD1 garage. I'd like to point out as well that the articulation is also taken to these retail frontages, that they are not consistent. Each one is sort of slightly different with differing heights, and I'll show in a few moments the opportunities for tenants to come in with additional enlivenments such as awnings, etc. And as we just heard from the previous ARB, that'll likely be its own thing as you get a tenant coming in and asking for that. But we're ensuring that not only are the upper parts of the building articulated, the lower parts are quite articulated, a lot of variation, really trying to foster as much excitement along the street as we can. Material-wise, and I'll get to this in a minute, but we do propose that each of these kind of modules become a different brick. That's why we have the 4 or 5 different brick palettes there. So taking, again, this constant theme of how introducing variety and interest, the material palette will be different as well. Just a detail on what one of those is, and we wanted to zoom in on this. There will be at least 2 fields of masonry per each bag, so a lot of articulation. This is showing sort of a beige colored brick, which you can see your materials in front of you, as well as a red tone. There will be a frame of material here, which will allow for future signage, obviously appropriately sized for city standards. And then an important note, which is we are actually recessing in the retail glazing to allow for deeper articulations and variation along the street. So when we even get down to the scale of 1 bay, there's a lot of attitude paid to this garage structure to make it feel like something very thoughtful and appropriate to the city. This is, again, the overall. As we move around the building, this is the short elevation from Lyle. So all elevations of the garage are treated with this. We're not looking at one elevation that wouldn't be just because it doesn't face a key neighborhood. And then here's the illustration of the back facade of the garage with that green buffer, which is essentially to answer your question, is a couple foot deep zone planting with a vertical green wall that will grow over time. So the idea is that you'll have a day 1 planter at the top of the building like that. There you go. This is a couple of feet deep here. That is a vertical wall which allows the planting to ascend over time.
So to what extent does it go? Will it hide the parking spots on the top?
What we would do is we would make sure that that wall, the 89'6" that Bob referenced, is set at about a 4-foot high level, so it will screen lights. So lights will not be allowed to shine southward, but you will, basically anything above 4 to 4'6" will be visible. So you'll see the little tops of the cars, but not the lights. We're very keen to make sure that light spillage didn't happen southward.
What about light spillage from what appear to be windows?
We can handle that in one of 2 ways. The initial intent was that these windows become functional. They're frosted, but that they do allow some light transmittance to come through, much like you would assume in a residence, where some lights will be softly on and not. So very little actual strong headlights, diffused light. But I think that they provide a benefit if they actually have some twinkle every once in a while, and it's not just a dark facade. So that's the intent, is that it's filtered and lessened, but that there is some moments of twinkle that would happen. Yeah, our hope with these windows and these facades is that they actually provide a real benefit to the whole neighborhood, but also to the garage itself. I apologize, I'm trying to get my clicker going the right way. There, because it's always the bottom one. So lastly, a point about the bridge. Again, as Bob had mentioned, we do anticipate a large number of people that will transverse east to west. The bridge connects the original headquarters with the new building. We see the bridge as an opportunity to do, again, this sort of symbolic art that talks about connection. That's the Liam Gillick piece that happens in the current building. We don't want it to be on the facade of the bridge, to be distracting or overwhelming. We do think of it as a moment on the interior that might be glimpsed occasionally through the glass and through the bridge is an important design feature. So a very simple and restrained bridge connecting point A to point B with some lighting details on the interior. And again, these are for the folks in the crowd who may not be able to see the large boards up here. Material palettes, looking at masonry systems. These are the glass pieces that are in the Liam Gillick art that would be at the main canopy. There's a series of clear glasses for the building. These are the stones that we start to look at the base of the building and landscape planters. So they're keyed in here, just sort of shows how they would be distributed around the plazas. This, I think, is probably the most interesting one in terms of the overall composition. This is the suite of the 4 masonry bricks that we were looking at for the garage, going from a red to a sort of darker tone, beige on the infill, and some light grays as we moved closer. If you remember the overall elevation, closer to the existing tower was more the gray tone. As we moved to the east, we went to the reds, and the reds would wrap around the back. And the intent is to have comparable tones to what's happening on the crescent. Metal panel for those retail frames, that would be a little bit more of a warm tone. So the intent on the garage, where the building, the office building, will be very modern. It will have a language similar to Centene Plaza, very deliberately so. The garage will be a warm tone, so it'll be much more residential, a softer feel. So very deliberate sort of a play of 2 different sets of materials. And then the glass, and this is subject, obviously, as we look through variations on type, but we will be matching. This is the original building here. And so we're looking for similar variations, right? So I won't get into a detailed technical discussion on the glass, but the idea is to have a family of glass. And so each building will have slight variations. As you can sort of see, this is a little lighter, these are a little darker, but it's generally the same clean, clear, modern glass kind of aesthetic that's on the existing building, which is very humble and I think really is much more about sort of letting the sky reflect than it is about a bold statement. So that's the intent, is to play with these small changes and some of those options. Signage right now, because obviously we have a lot of retail-ready space that will be very distinct for each tenant. We're identifying zones, and we anticipate coming back to you with more detail on signage. But these are just indicating key areas for retail. We anticipate key locations for building signage, which are the large blue dots. And then the red lines indicate where signage will happen at some point in the future as those tenants come on. So very difficult to define now. It's kind of a core shell kind of base building moment. But as we go into more detail, we would like to come back and talk more in signage. And elevations indicating in the light red, again, these frames for retail, these are sort of elevations dictating where signage could go. Zones for awnings and signage on retail. Again, you have multiple tenants who could have signage here. And then key moments like this vertical entry and the small corner for Centene building signage. Public art, as Bob mentioned, we see Liam Gillick having an opportunity to create a signature moment at the entry. So art signifies entry at both the bridge and the main lobby. Key sculptural element down here in the plaza. And then the bridge is not highlighted here, but that's our third point. So a couple of signature moments in this development for great public art. And just some detail on concepts, how this element currently could be turned to be a canopy, and the opportunities within the drop-off for a great piece of sculpture. So I hope that was thorough and to the point on SD1. That was a lot of material, and I appreciate folks' time. And with that, I'd like to hand it over for questions and answers.
Well, it's certainly a lot more detailed than we've ever seen before. It's nice to see it going in that direction. The north facade of the garages, well, first, how does the height of the garage in Subdistrict 1 relate to the height of the existing garage to the west of the current Centene building?
That's an excellent question, and I don't have the answer for you right off the top of my head. I can tell you with the surety that the agreed to 89'6" from Forsyth has been met and held to. So I think we could get back to you with the direct comparison between the two heights. I would assume, just based on my gut, is that this would certainly be lower where it steps down. I think we can get a better answer. You think it's, yeah, you're plus 10, aren't you? Yeah. So I believe that we talked about 10 stories on the existing building. This is 8 to 8.5. Yeah, so this will be about a full story long.
You addressed the windows on the south side of the garage. What about on the north side?
Windows on the north, I think, would be treated much the same. Again, having daylight and having light come into the garage, I think, is important. We would frost or control them. They're not fully clear. You don't want to be seen. I think all the activity in daylight, headlights, we want to screen them. And in fact, what we've started to do is ensure that, you know, this little white zone here in the rendering, that's a spandrel panel. Again, so even on every floor, we tried to keep the direct light from being screened to getting outside of the garages.
So are the garage levels aligned with those floors on the outside, or?
Yes, they are. You can see them right here.
Okay.
So each one of those bands basically is a slab line. So this is it's very honest representation of what's happening with an architectural treatment that's reflective of the neighborhood.
Are you mechanically ventilating the garage?
Yes, fully ventilated.
So we won't expect any openings.
Not openings, but what we will be working on is making sure that where we need some selective louvers for intake, that they'll be louvered and detailed into the wall, but we're not going to have big holes in the building at any point. What you see is the intent, which is an enclosed garage with full ventilation.
Then at the street level, you've indicated you've set back the storefront.
Correct.
And I forgot what the distance was of the width of the sidewalk, but it sounded like it was much wider than at the existing garage.
Yes, correct. I think we've got about an additional 6 to 7 foot above what happens in front of Centene Plaza, which is 8 to 9 feet over city standards. And that's for just obviously we want a lot of comfort for potential seating while still allowing for great folks to walk by and get to where they need to get. So that was a deliberate move. We've given breathing room, as Bob mentioned, on the back, on the alley, to create a wider alley, and on the front to create a better streetscape.
On the little step down,
Yep.
I know on the main part of the garage, you've provided a green edge. That piece, which is going to be more visible, doesn't seem to have any treatment.
Edge right here.
Yeah.
No, right now the intent is we've wrapped the masonry there. The green edge is really captured by the stair. So in case anyone wonders, part of the reason these are here is we got egress from the top deck. We've got to get folks to stairs. The green really lives between them, right? And that thing is sort of towards the back a little bit.
So are you saying that the parking slab is below?
Yeah,
I'm not quite sure.
the parking slab you can see is right about there.
Okay, but on the step down,
On the step down, it's also set in just a touch.
just a touch or?
So we won't have lights coming off of we'll do the similar sort of detail where we'll have the parapet come up to screen for lights. Yes.
So it would be similar but without green?
But without green? Yes, correct. Yeah, we kept the green to the high part.
Just a comment. It's a far more sophisticated design than in the original one that we saw several months ago. And it also relates a lot better to the existing Centene building. So it's good to see all the materials, and it's looking pretty good.
I guess I'd just like to see more. I just feel like we still got a lot of cars sitting on top of that garage, I guess, in my view. One time we talked about putting trees up there, not a green roof, but some kind of trees that you would normally see in parking lots, and I just feel like there's I think that would help an awful lot. Palm trees? That was Steve's idea. But I just feel like that would take away a lot of glare from, especially in the summertime, for people who are in the Crescent or even in your own building, not to be looking down on such a glaring space. If there's any way to work those in, that would be great.
And we'll also come back and double check that we're blocking all the headlights.
Yeah, that's essential, but
We'll present a detail on it.
that would be great, thank you.
You did say on the street side, the parking levels are level. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, on the north side of the garage, the parking levels are level.
But on the south side, I imagine that's where they are sloped.
Yeah, a portion of the south side has the ramp, correct.
So then the windows, at times, you may have a sloping deck crossing the window. Is that correct?
Yeah, in a few places you would, correct.
With the fritted glass or whatever, I don't think that'll make a difference.
Yeah, with the fritted or screen glass, you wouldn't see it in the daytime. You might get a shadow in the evenings if a car was passing, but for the most part, you won't see it. You'll perceive, much like the plaza's done, you'll see kind of a uniform facade for most of the day.
Further comments?
I just think the treatment at Hanley and Forsyth is a considerable improvement over previous concepts. And giving that much space over to the sidewalk and pedestrian way up there solved for me a significant number of questions I get about congestion of people at that intersection, providing pedestrians some relief. I think it's actually going to be quite a great public space, to be honest with you. So I strongly compliment you on that treatment and that first floor.
Thank you.
Was there a functional reason for the angled north facade?
There was some reason behind it, which had to do with, as we looked at the core and layout, we wanted to create some unique corners and unique lease opportunities for tenants and for Centene. Special corners in the office building are always great. Obviously, as I mentioned, we listened to the comments from the committee on adding more visual interest, and we took that to heart. But I do think that having those special zones makes it a pretty interesting and desirable moment for a tenant. Even just a slight kit, which gets you a view east, is going to be a pretty nice amenity on the northern side of the building.
Had you considered it for the south facade?
We did not, primarily because a nice south is kind of this ideal light situation. I liked the due south. South has a very crisp and formal quality, and it frames that southern space, I think, nicely. So we hesitated from doing it southwards.
I agree with your answer. I was just curious if you did it on one end, what about the other?
And can you tell us how far back from the balconies, the south part of the tower?
I believe we have hit that northern face, as Steve had mentioned, the northern face of the balcony is perpendicular, is right in line with as far as we push the tower. So it was 5 to 8 foot further north than I think we were. But that was a stipulation we agreed to, was to be north of that, south or north of that line.
I mean, backing away from the cantilever design from the previous schemes, this is a significant improvement, both for the people that live in the Crescent and the views that you talked about, as well as I think for the design of your building. So, what takes place on the third floor of that corner entry Forsyth and Hanley, is that all well bridge activity that's up there, or is that
The
a lot of activity?
second and third floor is intended right now to be Wellbridge.
Okay.
The roof deck, fourth floor would be tenant access. We're primarily Centene access.
Okay.
And on that roof deck, the green roof, are those, can people be on those? Are those the kind of green roofs that you can actually occupy?
Absolutely, yeah, so that's part of the design. The new design anticipates that being occupied.
Okay.
Are there other comments?
No, I'd just also like to compliment you on the choice of materials. I think making a big switch between the office tower materials being the crisp, clean, very contemporary thing to add a warmer, and with more variety of materials on the parking garage. It's also going to help work in when we get to the other schemes for the residential transition and some of those other pieces as well.
Yeah, thank you, agreed.
I like the design, I like the activation of Foresight and having the interaction of the retail to Foresight, and it's the people coming in from MetroLink, coming to the city, having some breaking points. I like where the auditorium is located, so I do see a lot of improvements that are very popular there.
Thank you.
And as we go forward, of course, we're going to continue this public hearing meeting also, but we will then get into the site plan review and the architectural review, which you've already given us a pretty good head start. So we appreciate that. But before we go on, are there any comments on the Sub-District 1 from the audience? And if so, please come up and identify yourself and have you signed in.
No, I did not.
And then please do it in reverse order.
I can do that.
Thank you.
My name is Elizabeth Green, and I am a resident of Clayton. I'm also a member of Wellbridge. I was also here, not here, but because we didn't have large meetings when the first Centene building went up. And I was very involved with that too. First of all, I would like to say, yes, I think that what you have proposed is beautiful for that corner, and I am appreciative of that. But I am a Wellbridge member, and I travel east on Forsyth 5 days a week, and that does not include Saturday and Sunday. And I have not passed a 5-day work week in 2 years where there was not a vehicle blocking at least one lane of traffic, dropping off people. I have actually seen 2 women get out of their vehicle, the driver and the passenger, walk to the no standing, no parking sign, stand under it, and yak while they waited. I don't know what they were saying.
In front of Wellbridge?
Yes, no, in front of you. In front of the existing Centene.
Oh, yeah, we know.
Yes,
We know.
well, it happens at a minimum of twice.
Yeah, we know.
And it is something I've called the police on multiple times. And I have a concern about this, and this is a concern I would like to address now so that it is on the records. I believe that since the city of Clayton should not have to pay for police officers to indeed patrol what is the current drop-off area, because I don't know if we were involved with that first Centene building, but I do remember, and it's been documented, that at that point Centene said they were going to provide a drop-off on Rondelet, west of Forsyth, and that there would be a covered walkway so that that would be where drop-offs would happen. That never happened.
I was very involved in it.
It never happened.
I don't remember that.
Oh, I do vividly. And as a result, we have the problem on eastbound Forsyth. If your new main entry for the District 1 is now also going to be on Forsyth, you are doubling up the problems that exist on Forsyth. First, the ones that are west of Hanley, and new ones that will be east of Hanley. and probably once they're coming from North Hampton to turn onto Forsyth to get into the new parking garage. So what I would like to see the city of Clayton and the people sitting at that table over there, that you require Centene to have security people at those quote-unquote drop-off areas where there is no standing and no stopping, not only at the building that exists currently on the southwest corner of Hanley and Forsyth, but in the new section, and also at the circular drop-off down at Cromwell and Hanley. You are going to experience major traffic issues because of people wanting to stand and get out of their car and talk while they are supposedly dropping off somebody who is going to a Centene building. So I would like you all to consider that to be a responsibility of the owners of the building to provide security that will keep people moving much like they do in front of the airport. Which reminds me that most of the time, the taxi cabs that stand right under the no standing, no parking sign to let off their customers are airport cabs. And that happened 8 times in the last 3 weeks, to me. That's the number one thing I would like. Number 2, I am, as I have said, a Wellbridge member. And I know that this is not particularly an issue for the decision of Clayton, but I want it made known that I would like to know how Wellbridge is supposed to, it has been promised that Wellbridge will stay in existence until its new location in the Centene building is built, so that we will not miss any of our membership time. But at what point, where will we park once you put us up in the new tower or in the second and third floor on the southeast corner? Where are we going to park? Because that building won't have been built yet. So will you be providing us parking, or will we be fighting with several thousand people for parking spaces in that area? I know it doesn't seem like it's an interesting thing to you all, but it is an importance for all of the people who actually work out at Wellbridge and go there every day, and that will be that much more parking that will not be available for them until that parking garage is made available. Number 3, will there be any access from the parking garage directly into the new Centene building? So we won't have to go out on the street. That's great. That's a lovely thing. And number 4, I just would like to say, I love the idea of multi-use, multi-purpose buildings, but how long did it take that Centene building to finally get all of its retail space filled? And is it filled yet to this day? That's an issue that you are going to have, which will be unfilled retail scape on any of these new buildings. Because there is, as you said, you cannot say who's going to be there. But there is no guarantee that those are going to be filled. So I want that kind of consideration given to this project. I thank you very much for your time, and if you'll hand me a sheet, I'll sign it for heaven's sake.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? No. Bob and Eli, anything further before we continue this public hearing?
No, I mean, just thoughtful questions. I appreciate that. We're going to, it's a good segue for our next presentation, which will answer the question where we'll park in the meantime to keep Wellbridge in business all the time. But they have no intention, Wellbridge, of not being able to service their customers the entire time. So we'll be working closely on for that. As you know, our camp has a 4 drop-off area here, and
How many spaces is that, how many actual spaces, how many cars could be dropping off? Four?
Four.
Well, we will continue the public hearing for Part B tonight, and we'll move into public hearing C, which will be for Subdistrict 2A. And that will, of course, include Subdistrict 2A. Eventually, we'll get to the subdivision plan, site plan review, and architectural review, but your presentation will more or less cover all of that tonight. So do we have a motion for opening the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Okay, here we go. So, I'm Bob Clark again, representing the same team. And this is basically an overview of 2A, B, and C. B and C are, B is the auditorium and is currently, I think aggressively going through the programming and planning process. Kishore Wakefield has, along with the rest of our team, has brought on another architect expert to work on the what we believe will be a very iconic auditorium structure for the future. You'll be hearing much from Chris Rudersheim on that. The 2C will be the residential building, and again, we're just beginning the programming on that, but we very much would like to build this whole block out and have this whole place as one unit. But in the meantime, we're focused on 2A because in shifting all these things around and keeping Wellbridge in business and being able to get the tower occupied as soon as possible, the very first thing that we need to start construction on is this 2A structure, which is the parking structure to support Track 2, and it does support Wellbridge in the temporary assignment when we will be after we build this section, then we'll move Wellbridge into here. There'll be parking here. We're making some other arrangements for some additional parking. And then we'll tear down the Wellbridge building, and we'll be building this section as quickly as humanly possible. So that's what's going to happen there. And then again, this is the engineering technical drawing for 2A, aligning our ingress and egress of our garage directly across from Lee, which was a critical aspect of the project's goals from the AO Board of Alderman meeting. We've obviously gone through all of our engineering. These are just technical auto turn diagrams and how we restriped all of the roads for the traffic study. Our tree planting plan, which Eli will go into more detail on, specifically like he did the other plan. This is our required site plan showing our active pedestrian-friendly street frontage. Again, I think when we get our 2B auditorium design, you'll be very excited by what you see is happening there. And then I think at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Eli.
So once again, Eli with HOK for the development team. A much simpler presentation, I think, today on 2A than we have on 1 that we just completed. And I wanted to just flip back here for a moment to illustrate the attitudes that we took and the overall look at SD1 about increasing active street frontage, again, reducing the amount of garage that is visible to Forsyth, and setting up the stage here. You can see that the future civic auditorium and the residential area that's going to be to the south, we also anticipate the benefit that provides to the full street network. And so, again, harkening back to the old SDD, this garage was previously over 2,000 spaces. It has obviously been significantly reduced as we looked at the balance. And just to remind that the combination of 1 and 2 has been compressed. as part of our agreement for the overall parking matrix for the SDD. So it's an important point to make as we look at why we've done what we've done. We've got that key entrance indicated by the large key, which then dedicates that middle zone of the garage. We have focused a key lobby element, so making sure people are moving on Forsyth, and that there's a lobby there that they can get out and walk down the street along all that great retail we just showed you on SD1. So foot traffic hopefully will lead to aggressive tenancy. That's good for everyone. From the other side of the garage, we have a pod of retail-ready space. One could envisage that being a great support for this new civic auditorium. And then as Bob mentioned in the SDD, the land bank for an appropriately scaled auditorium that we're talking about really sits off to the right. So this, in the end, will be an incredibly active and an iconic piece of the city with a great amount of visual activity, with really now being limited to this small frontage on Forsyth, which I think is a real net improvement over where we were a few months ago. The mature pod, as I mentioned, we want some consistency, so we were going to abide by all of the city standards around the full perimeter wherever necessary, and then continue the palette when you get onto the development property of pavers, appropriate tones of gray. So there is always a high level of finish throughout the entirety of the development. You know, we're not talking about because we come down in front of a retail going to all stamped concrete. We do continue this language of pavers and high level of finish throughout the district. This looks very familiar to where we were because it's intentionally so. We want to maintain city-approved standards for trees, continuing the London plane trees so we have a consistent street edge throughout the development, and then mixing color and other approved trees where we can. The elevations as they stand are an interesting thing to talk about because with 2A, we were sort of talking about an initial build with future in these dash zones. We do anticipate having a continuation of the idea of these individual retail zones on Forsyth, which is the drawing on the top. Again, windowed fenestration, masonry patterns. This is more right now in the gray tones and a little bit sort of softer, more akin to the sort of civic as we come to the auditorium. And then we could imagine once again changing back to the warmer tones as we went down to SD3. This is a deliberate move because I think that we are cognizant that we don't have an entire elevation that is the same tone, that we don't continue, that you get to this block and you see something different. You see this as relating now. It is still a garage for that smaller section, but as we get into the auditorium, it sets the, I don't want to use sets the stage, it gets ready for the future development. Go ahead.
I would just like to go back to the landscape just for a minute.
Of course.
The trees. You said that, I think you said a couple of times that the London plane tree you were putting as the street tree?
Yep.
So,
Jeff left. Go ahead.
I thought, isn't there a danger in having the same tree as our street tree in case of, Dutch elm disease or currently facing with the ashes?
I think it's a great question, and I can ask the landscape team to answer it more directly. I think the intent was in the master plan that we were reacting to initially was for continuity. I think it's a fair comment. So we can look to address that.
I think we have a landscape architect.
Derek, I didn't see him, so if you don't mind.
Hey, Joanne. Derek Down with HOK. To your point, we are looking at a hierarchy. So on Forsyth, where there is the Lacebark Elm, continuing that on Forsyth, on Carondelet, looking to use the London Plane, and then on Hanley, we're looking for a third sort of true. We are trying to be cognizant of the fact of different species and not overburdening them. And these have all been double-checked and cross-referenced with the city's reference list, and also approved by the third party as well.
That was a much better answer than mine. Continuing as we talk about elevations, we have paid mind, although this elevation on the bottom will not be visible shortly after construction because of the phased future construction. We are anticipating doing a masonry palette on that facade, even in the initial two-way build. So not leaving simply a blank garage facade, but picking a few textures here and some relief. So we're not anticipating putting windows because we do see down the road there being a building directly in front of it. So from a fire code perspective alone, we need a solid wall. But we do need to treat the solid wall with a variety of materials and some relief panels, which is what this lower elevation is showing. Pulling, you can see the gray masonry comes around the corner. It becomes a lighter beige tone, and then we have the red framing back towards the crescent. So the red brick concept will essentially become the neighborhood, a common palette sort of around the crescent, and we go to sort of other tones there. And so I'm hopefully preempting the question of why there aren't windows. We do need a fire-rated assembly as we build into future phases down the road, so we're sort of prohibited from that. But we will do a masonry design on that, as well as the upper drawing is the elevation that will be blocked off when the future auditorium comes in. So again, masonry there, brick, textured brick materials for the short term. And then down below you can see the similar kind of detail to what we had on SD1, and very deliberately that. We see Lyle not just as an alley, but becoming an important street, which is why we've added additional width for the street. We've added articulation. We've created similar kind of language on the east side of Lyle as we had on the west where it steps now.
So on that, I'm just looking at this elevation.
Yes.
On your pedestrian map, you showed a path along here.
Correct.
Can you speak to that?
I'll go back to the plan. So the sidewalk, the street, the city standard street, make my laser. City standard street is going to run from Forsyth down Lyle, and again, this is where we've added additional width beyond city standard. So to us, this is all part of our sidewalk. You can see the brick edge, the standard tree pits, etc. So bringing that condition of the public realm down to here, these are not loading spots as much as they're just additional overflow. The alley has a number of spaces for vehicles simply to queue up. So that's really what that's intended. But the path then will come down, and as we get into what 2C is, this green space will be that through cut. So you could walk from here, down across the sidewalk, and then down through to get down to the crown of that circle. And again, all the green space coordinate areas we've shown you do not include driveways, drop-offs, etc. So to Bob's point, there are opportunities, I think, as we get into 2C for appropriately designed and scaled smaller parks in and around this residential development as we move forward. So lastly, I think this is a diagram that is not rendered as we've shown some of the others, but is very clear to explain our day one condition of textured masonry of multiple material types, wrapping the corner all the way so that we complete the garage as we finish 2A. And then these are simple areas, right? They're not a design. That's just to indicate that somewhere within those boxes is where we'll come back and have a specific design for the auditorium and for the future residential building there. And that will obviously have all the things we've shown you in SD1 with materiality, articulation, thoughtful elevations, etc. As Bob said, the intent is to make sure we get all of the capacity for our rubbish tenants for the use we need to up and running to allow this to happen, to allow the SD1 title to come on when it's needed.
In SD,
sorry, I'm reviewing. SD would be sub-district.
In the 2C, the residential part,
Yes.
Does that have retail on the bottom?
It's currently in the SDD application intended that it would, to be designed. Yeah, so remember our active street drawing, we would hope that that would continue as we get into that level of detail. And then just another view of that same diagram as we come around. Briefly on signage, we anticipate having a parking sign, limited retail, and small parking. So very limited signage here because one can imagine limited signage will be to identify the corporate conserved auditorium down the road. So, really limited to the retail zones. And again, we've articulated those individually at the base of the building, much like SD1. Each retailer will have a distinct identity.
In that smaller parking garage, what is the total parking spots?
I would have to, I believe it's in the 900 range, but the specific number I don't have off the top of my head.
So you would expect it to be sufficient for the civic auditorium?
We have sized this garage to suit what is necessary for the auditorium, temporary needs, that then shift down the road for us for the SD1 and the overage at SD1. So
It does have the parking for the auditorium. What's the other?
Right,
garage
says,
built?
short answer is yes, that's a much better way to put it, yeah.
Is, in garage 2A, there are 3 rows of parking
There are.
as opposed to 2 rows of parking in the garage to the west.
Correct.
Is
We
there,
were, if you look at the site plan with the triangular shape, it gives the opportunity to do that. There's no physical way to get
It's the
through
same
those.
as the current garage that we have, is 3D.
Yeah. So it,
Our current garage that we have is 3D.
okay. Yeah, the one to the west of the current building.
Yes. So the site was deep enough to do that.
If the total parking is 900, then the southernmost row is probably 300, somewhere around. Where is the parking for the proposed 2C residential? Will it be private or will it be mixed in?
It'll be mixed. Some of it will be in here and some of it will be under the building.
Under the residential?
Under the residential building.
Okay. It seems like that third row is getting very, very close to the crescent. And everything we see, it looks like a very narrow opening where you've said that the walkway would go from Forsyth all the way through to Corona Left.
It's the same as it was presented in the approved SPD. It's the same distance. In the proposal, in the SPD amendment proposal, we mistakenly put 30 feet in there, but we're going to fix that and move it back to 35 feet. But we're going to keep it the same as the current approved SPD.
but doesn't it come further south?
No?
No?
That's where the line was of the residence before. It
But,
was, now it's, from the outside, it's not different. It was a residential building, and now it's the wall of the garage.
But in the
It's the same wall.
But in the approved SDD, weren't there only 2 rows of parking?
They're right. Yeah, but the residential wall was still right where this wall is. We stayed inside this. When we brought the third row over, we brought it in where the residential building was before.
And then the residential building comes further south,
Correct.
taking over the green space that we talked about
Some
before.
of it, but it's prime real estate to not develop. And there's no setback, there were no setbacks. I mean, the crescent go right to the property line. And that's where the last part of the problem.
One of the benefits to the current design is it's probably as small of overall volume as we can get. It's a benefit to the 3 bays as they tend to be incredibly efficient in terms of how much actual building we're building for every product space. So the overall benefit versus 3 versus 2 is indeed a smaller garage.
So then the 2 garages that we're looking at tonight in Subdistrict 1 and 2A, is the total parking capacity there the same as what was approved in the SDD for the 2 garages?
It's when you total up, and I've even accounted for the future potential underneath the residential, we are approximately 200 spaces less than what we had shown in the initial SDD across these 2 projects. So it has gotten, not only did we reduce bulk of frontage, we reduced parking count.
So those windows on the end of the crescent on that side, what are they? Are they into units or are they into the corridors? Do you know?
In the crescent?
In the crescent? The ones that will eventually be essentially looking out into the side of your residential.
I think so. I think they're bedroom windows, but I'm not 100% sure.
I can answer that question. They're my bedroom windows.
Okay.
3 to 3.5, depending on the ramp location.
And then, just in approximate numbers, SD1, how many parking spaces are there, and SD2 and SD3?
So 1 is 1750 from the SDD, and 2, again, I don't have the exact number, but it's in that 9-ish range. I apologize for not having that metric right off the top of my head.
No, that's great. And then SD3 would be the balance to get to that 5,000.
Well, 5,800, remember, is across the full SDD. So SD3 would have its own specific count, which I think to Bob's point will come back to you with that. So at no point is the intent to exceed the approved 5,800 across the full SDD. We're maintaining that.
Thank you very much.
Which will, I think, includes SD4 also.
The lay of the land where sub-district 2 is seems to be higher, and you had shown a elevation of Forsyth where going from Hanley Road to the east it dips down and then it comes back up.
Correct.
So is this SD2A garage, is it apparently sunken more down than is the SD1 garage?
The way to answer that, I think, is that the top decks of these are aligned on what we agreed to for the 89.6. So as a result, you could say that it looks to be further in the ground because of the way the topography works. Remember, it actually is low here, it comes up, it dips down, and then it comes back up again. So it's pretty interesting and quite challenging stretch of land to get to work when you think about retailers, and we use that to our advantage to actually create that variation in retail. That's part of the way that we get those different retail storefronts to look quite different.
So if we understand, it's really the 89.6 height that determined the volume.
Yeah, we started at the top and worked down.
Is that 89.6 from Forsyth?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's
Forsyth.
I guess I'm a bit uncomfortable with the closeness on 2C to the residences. I'm wondering if there's some way that that can be removed. Maybe go higher and get skinnier, I don't know. But that does make me a little uncomfortable that it's now. Before, I believe it ended before their final window. And now it seems like it's covering the whole side of the east side. And possibly you're not far enough along to know that.
Yeah, we don't see any detail except for the massing of 2B and 2C. But from what Joanne was saying, I wonder if there will be really sufficient residential units in there, or should they be moved to sub-district 3?
No, we think it's too valuable of a piece of real estate to move to. We think it's a very valuable. We think we're good. We've seen some preliminary plans, but we think we're going to have 40 or 44 really nice, marketable condominiums. Part of the problem with SD3 is that we're going to be facing north. So our units on Forsyth, I can see where our neighbor to the north would really like us to have residential units all along the face of Forsyth, but we're facing north. We would rather him trade and give us his property on the other side so that we have sunshine on the face of our residential. But the truth is that SD2C site is a terrific residential site. It's too valuable for a piece of real estate to not utilize for what it was intended in the master plan to be used for, which is high density residential.
And I would agree with you, I'm not arguing, and I'm certainly not suggesting that we not have that.
I just wanted to go back though to your question about so before this you know, this wall was always there before. It was in the plan that was approved by you all and the Board of Aldermen.
No, and I agree with you.
Yeah,
What
and
I'm,
it was tall. This was always,
right, and I'm not arguing, what's concerning me is how far south it's coming. It's coming further south.
well, yeah, that's true. but
That's, and I just eyeballed it when I was standing outside the building, and it kind of looked like, and of course, I'm just using what you've provided us, but it kind of looked like it was covering all of the windows on that side.
Well, this isn't a design of the building, this is just a massing thing. The building will end up being carved back so that it can get used back into the.
That would be great.
So maybe some, maybe we'll be able to come back and show you some basic ideas, but we have to be able to utilize our real estate.
No, we're not arguing that you shouldn't, and I think actually I agree with you that it would be great to have more residential going along Fond-du-Lac.
And also, our building is going to be looking at their building, and so we're going to be trying to.
Maybe, it's complimentary.
We want the distance to be as far as we can make it too, because we don't want to build a building 30 feet away from another building either, and our windows are going to be looking right into the other building. So that's something that we'll be taking into consideration. I just want to point out that, again, I think it's really important to know that this line right here, where we're at, is what we approved. There was already a wall that was the same height as the crescent there. So we
Now,
haven't.
it's not that eastern wall, it's the side, how far south, just to be sensitive to those.
I understand.
So Bob, what we're hearing you say is you need to be complementary between the Crescent and the 2C residences. And as we saw in the original, it looked like the 2C residence, and it wasn't called that at that time, may be covering the northernmost window on the east side of the Crescent, one window. But when we come to the current one, it comes down about 2/3 to 3/4 the length of the east facade of the Crescent. So your comments, I think we all agree with. Articulate that 2C building so that the windows and the residents on both sides, the Crescent and the new structure, don't stare at each other too closely. Other comments?
No, I think they put it well. I mean, you're gonna want that for your own building when you get there in the design
Yeah,
stage.
sure.
But if you're gonna have windows on that side and residents are gonna be looking out into something, so, I mean, that's gonna be something that's gonna become a
Right, we have to be
design.
creative to work out.
Yeah.
Is there parking underneath the auditorium?
No. There won't be. It's a vibration.
Other comments? Any comments from the audience on Sub-District 2? Please come up.
Al Citron from I live at the Crescent.
I'm sorry, can you repeat your name?
Citron, Citrin. It's really just a question. First off, did you say condos or apartments for the form?
We think we can.
Condos. Okay. My question is on the two parts of the two garages that surround Lyle, the Notch Down District.
That is a bad water.
Okay, the Centene was very accommodating to the Crescent by putting the green space on top of the garage, and we appreciate that. But at the notched out area on the south side, it still faces the Crescent, and it will face your condos. So would you consider putting green space on the lower back of the south end of the lower also?
We can study that.
Okay, that was mine. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other audience comments? Any further comments before we continue the public hearing? Bob or Eli, anything more from you?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your attention.
I think that brings us to the end of our 3 public hearings. All of them are continued to December 19th, 2 weeks from tonight. And we appreciate the more detail that we've seen tonight. It certainly seems to be moving in a positive direction. And we appreciate everyone in the audience coming and voicing comments as they saw fit. This ends the public hearing. We still